Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 Hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. And if you are not listening to him on the Pin Down over on the DBB YouTube channel, you should be doing that. Him and Blake Silverman. I see my guy Blake is already getting into the 2025 NBA draft. So they're covering all sorts of stuff over there. That's really good stuff. And if you are listening to us live on Facebook, welcome in. I don't know if you've been listening to the Pistons Pulse or not, but this is our first time going live on Facebook. We think the comments, yes, the comments are working. Hey, shout out Robin Chan, our guy. We don't give Robin enough love. Wes is the guy that makes this happen, and Robin has just as much to do with it as Wes.
You do need to shout out Robin. His expertise with the mics and he got his stands, everything. He's put just as much work into this thing as we have.
Robin and Wes make the Pistons Pulse. Me and Omari do not deserve the credit those guys do. So if you're watching live on Facebook right now, you can drop comments in. We'll see it. We'll put them up on the screen, all of that. Obviously on YouTube, you guys know the drill. And we're doing an all stats episode, Omari. So we can't wait to get the feedback from all of you. And we want to hear yours. Cade Cunningham's going to be first up here in just a little bit. What do you guys think his stats are going to be this year? But Omari, first, before we get going, the Olympics, where are you at? Have you been watching anything specifically? Looking forward to anything? As we're starting to get somewhat close to the end of it. I think we got another week or so.
Yeah, about another week. And it's been great. I just tuning in and watching whatever, Peacock, they have this stream where they just kind of dropped into the key moments for whatever sports are being played. I obviously been watching basketball, but I've pretty much caught all of Simone Biles and all the Olympics. I've watched all the Canoe Slalom ones. I'd never watched it before this year, and I'm obsessed with it.
You were obsessed. That's your thing. You brought it up every chance I've given you to bring it. You love it, man.
I need to find a Canoe Slalom track and get out there and get to
be
work.
Out on the water. Amari is leaving the Free Press to pursue an Olympic career in canoeing. I love it.
It's not too late.
Post it on Twitter.
Yeah, and then I don't know what sport it was, but it was these big dudes just throwing these saucers, or it was called discus maybe. I don't know, but they were just
track and field. What are you talking about? You don't know what sport it
wasn't track and field. No, it wasn't track and field. They were just throwing. They were just throwing this it wasn't a rock. It was something, but it was how far can you throw it?
That's track and field. Was it not
a different name though? Had a different name though.
Or hammer?
It was shot put. Shot put. It was shot put.
That is track and field. They're just doing it in the center.
Yeah, but it's it's track put.
Okay, so the American dude is the best of all time apparently.
Yeah,
I mean, he's awesome. But yeah, so we still got some of the sprints left, and it's very cool to have the Summer Olympics because we go from the finals right into NBA draft, the offseason, summer league, and now we've had the Olympics to kind of give us this break or take over this break before we get to the Detroit Lions and NFL, and then we'll be right into training camp in the NBA. So that's what I love the most about this. I start school a week from now. I don't know what Detroit schools do in terms of starting, if they're after Labor Day or not, but yeah, I'm excited whenever we have Summer Olympics because of all of that. So yeah, Aruna, you got to slow down, man. We got Cade first. He dropped Duran's in here as well.
Yeah, Aruna's been doing research. He's not holding back.
He's ready to go. Relaxing Sound says yo, and then YouTube user, are your predictions going to miss the mark as bad as previous years? Just kidding.
We got good predictions.
I was going to say, we got crushed immediately after the Jay Nivey one last year. And then you're the one that said Duran was going to go 12-12, and that's essentially what he did. So yeah, I don't think we're that bad at it, but we may be. I'm sure there's some that weren't very good, and I'm sure there's going to be some today that people don't agree with. So let's get into it. Aruna started us off. This is interesting because right off the bat, I'll have a little bit of a different thought on Cade than what Aruna does. He has Cade at 18, 5, and 10. So again, if you're tuning in live on YouTube or Facebook, give us your stats as we go through the players. If you're listening after the fact, tweet at us, leave it in the comments, whatever. I'll let you go first. And then as always, because this is now a tradition on the Pistons Pulse, Wes will keep track, right, Wes? And then you'll give us the averages between me and Omari. Perfect. You're the man. What do you have for Cade Cunningham this year after last season where he averaged just under 23 points, 4.3 rebounds, 7.5 assists on 45, 35, 87 shooting splits?
So actually I have him pretty similar next season. Like, I'd anticipate maybe a slight uptick in scoring, if that. Like, I still think he'll be around 23 points per game. I still think he'll be around 8 assists, but I think he'll be more efficient as a playmaker with fewer turnovers. It'll be more like we saw over the last 50 games rather than those first 15 or whatever, where he was leading the league in turnovers. And, still around 4 rebounds. I don't see that really being altered too much. But a lot of it to me is just the efficiency going up. I think he shoots better from 3. He was 35 last year. I could see him being 36 or maybe at best even 37. Again, he shot the ball really well over the last 50 games of last season. And I'm wondering if his overall shot volume goes down a little bit and just the efficiency difference makes up that gap, because you have Tobias who we'll talk about, Fontecchio. You have guys who can really step up and share some of that load. So not too much change from me, but I do see him being more efficient overall.
So Mel has Cade at 25, 5, and 8 on 45, 36, 88. Michael has him at 24, 4, and 9. Jeremy, 25, 7, and 7, 3 championship drive, 26, 5, and 9 on 47, 37, 88. Relaxing Sounds, 25, 8.5. I assume that's the assists, and 4 rebounds. I had Cade Cunningham at 24 points per game, 4 rebounds. I just don't think there's a lot of rebounds to go around. No. 8.5 assists. I have that going up. And then you mentioned the efficiency. I have him at 46, 36, 88. My biggest number for Cade, Omari, is 6 free throw attempts, which would be 1.5 more per game compared to last season. That's what I would like to see from Cade. Now, I have a little bit of sheet or sham for you. So, and then Ashton, the trainer, says all-star. Yeah, I mean, those are getting to those numbers, and that leads me right into this. Omari, true or false, Cade Cunningham was one of 6 players in the NBA last season to average more than 22 points and more than 7 assists of players who played 41 games. One of 6. True or false?
I'm going to say true. And just off the top of my head.
Who are they? Can you name any of the others?
So it was the 7 assists, and what was the points cut off?
22.
22. I was going to say
41 games. So real quick, like
games,
like Embiid didn't play 41 games. So
yeah, I was thinking Halliburton, but I don't know if he actually bet the points. But besides him, I would say LeBron.
Yep.
I don't know if Steph Curry got the.
He did not. Steph did not. The Halliburton was at 20.1 points.
Yeah, so he just fell short. What about Giannis? Did he crack 7 assists?
He did not. So
Dame did, maybe. Somebody on there had to.
Dame, yeah. So
Dame was on there. Okay, so
Dame
LeBron,
did, and not Jan. LeBron. There's 2 obvious ones that
Jokic and Luka.
There you go. So you need one more. Too. The other one is obvious, but I probably wouldn't have named him either. Like, I feel like he gets lost in some of the. Think about a guy that puts up a bunch of numbers, but doesn't necessarily always translate to winning.
Bunch of numbers doesn't always translate to winning.
He's a small guard.
Oh, Trae Young.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And that's an obvious one, too. You just don't think of him because the Hawks have just been so up and down.
Yeah, so that's it. Like, the numbers make sense. He had the least amount of free throw attempts per game of all of those guys by over 1 and still put up those numbers. That's not me knocking Cade. That's just saying, once he actually gets the free throw attempts, I think it'll be even better. So I'm projecting 24 and 8, right? Like, that's what I'm projecting. You know how many of those guys did that? It's not 6 of them. You know how many?
I would guess 24 and 8. I would guess 3, maybe
4. Jokic, LeBron, Doncic, and Trae Young. So I mean, it's just these are crazy numbers. Is my point here? That's what I'm trying to get to. Is I'm interested. We got 25 and 8.5. We got a 26 and 9, 25, 7 and 7. Jeremy, I just don't know that there's enough rebounds to go around, once we get to this. I spent all day yesterday texting Wes, like, I have too many points. I'm giving too many points in this. And I think we'll get into that conversation of why. Again, Michael was 24 and 9. We had 25 and 8. I think the expectation is 24, 25 points, 8 or 9 assists. That's going to put him in rare company, Omari, if he does that.
Yeah, I mean, he knocked on it last season, and I'm glad you brought the free throws up, too, because that's really where his scoring can see the most uptick, right? Like, I just don't know shot diet-wise if you want him taking more shots than last season, but if he starts to get those quote-unquote star calls, right, he's taking 6, 7 free throws a game instead of 4, which is a pretty, not dramatic increase, but that's a healthy increase. But now you're talking about him cracking 25 points per game every single season, and we've talked about on here before, but that's a difference for, like, a lot of stars is just how much they get to the line, right? Like, it's really hard to crack that 24 point per game threshold if you don't get to the line. And that's been his main obstacle so far. So if he does make that leap, then my 23 point per game prediction may end up being too low.
Yeah, and listen, I had him at 25 points per game, and then I had to move guys down. I had to bump numbers down because I just had too many as I was trying to figure things out. But I think he's in for a big year. You have, especially offensively, you have the right kind of people around him. The floor spacing can be around him. I will put one other caveat. I want to see 70 games played from Cade this year. Like, that's another important thing for me. So the efficiency, we've talked about it a lot. That could be free throw attempts or just be his shot making in general, the games played, and then defensively. I think at the end of the day, Omari, I'd be interested to get your thoughts. I would just rather see him make a jump defensively than the rebounding. Like, when he came into the league, I was thinking triple-double Cade. He's going to get, 25, 10, and 10, like those type of, not averages, but,
yeah.
Now I don't care as much about the rebounds. I want to see him be really good on the defensive end. Where are you at with that? Do you agree? I know we'll get into the stats in a second, but I don't see where the rebounds come from. But if he could be better defensively this year than last, I think that would be more important.
Yeah, the rebounds really can't be a concern at this point. I think with him, just given, he's a big guard. He's going to have games where he has 6, 7, 8. But ultimately, Duran's one of the best rebounders in the league already. He's not going to get worse anytime soon. Paul Reed can really rebound. Isaiah's always been solid. Tobias, healthy rebounder, right? Asar, Holland, healthy rebounders. Like, there's just, if anything, this team should be able to rebound the ball if nothing else next season. I would say that.
My hope is they score the ball more and they rebound better. I don't know if the overall defense is going to be better, because potentially your two best defenders, definitely your best defender, and then one of your top 4 or 5 are first and second year players. But I think they're going to be able to score the ball more. We're going to jump gears just a little bit. Robin says, don't have much to say on stats. That's why I listen to you guys. But he said he very much supports 100% Ranny's Traeger grill, and he hopes to get one in the future. Yes, Robin, I can very much endorse that. It is an awesome purchase. You should get it. You can have cookouts. You can, as summer grinds
We're
to
on the line here. No debate here. We're on the line. Traeger grills are great. That's the main reason why I want to be a homeowner. So I got to have a backyard and a grill. Like, those are the most important things of owning a home, the backyard and the grill.
Yeah, the backyard with very straight diagonal lines that are mowed perfectly every single week.
Or a really big deck and wood chips. A lot where you get way more utility out of that.
Nobody wants to walk on wood chips. Where are the kids going to play? Where's the backyard football game? You can't play football on wood chips.
Yeah, I can't plan for kids I don't have, but I can plan for a house.
That's fair. Okay,
there we go.
Let's keep it moving. So Tobias Harris is... Here's the order of events. We're kind of doing guys that are a little more established. So we did Cade, we have Tobias and Simone, and then some younger type players will be next: Jaden, Jalen, Asar, and Ron. And then we'll get to some of the older guys at the end. We will get to what I think both of us believe are the top 10 or so regardless. But we're going to go to Tobias Harris next. So Omari, last year, Cade, our averages, don't want to skip this because this is what Wes does best. So our official Pistons Pulse prediction for Cade is 23.5, 4 assists, 8.3 rebounds on 46, 36, 88. So that finishes up with
the other way around. 8.3 rebounds and 4 assists, but 8.3 assists and 4.3 rebounds. Okay, yeah, there we go.
So Tobias last year averaged 7.2 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3.1 assists on 49, 35, 88. What are your official predictions for Tobias Harris stats with the Pistons?
Yeah, what's so interesting about him is, one, he's going to turn 33, after next season. So how much does that factor in? But beyond that, he's not going to have an Embiid and a Maxey next to him, right? Realistically, he's the second option, depending on Ivy's progression, obviously, but based on what we know now, he's the second option. So how much does his shot total increase, and how much does his efficiency maybe make up for his shots maybe going down if Ivy does become that guy? I say all that to say, I have Tobias averaging 18 points a game. I have him at about 6 rebounds, and I have him at about 2 assists per game. I do think the playmaking declines a little bit just because they need him to be much more of a scorer, but not too different from last season. I do think maybe the efficiency goes down a little bit, but I'm going to go 47% overall, 36 from 3, 86 at the line.
So Michael has Tobias at 18.5, 5.5, and 3. And yeah, Wes always said, look, I'll always read it no matter who we're talking about: points, rebounds, assists, and then percentages are field goal, 3-point field goal, free throw. And 3 championship drive has 18, 5, and 2. So I think a lot of us are going to be in the same spot here. I have him at 17 points, just dipping just a little bit lower than last year, 5.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists on 48, 37, 88. My biggest thing, Omari, is the corner 3-point percentage. I want him over 40% from three this next season. And he's 42% on corner threes since 2018. And much like Cade, I want to see Tobias play 70 games. And he has averaged 70 games played over his last 5 seasons and 33.7 minutes per game. So that's really where it comes down to it with me, for me, with Tobias. Make those corner threes. He shot 35% last year, tick that up just a little bit, be that second option if necessary, but he doesn't have to take the usage. The reason I didn't go more points per game is because last year Bojan got 15 field goal attempts per game. Harris has actually been a touch below that the past few seasons. And I realize he was playing on the Sixers. I get it. But I don't know that he's going to come in and demand the same amount of field goal attempts that Bojan was. I don't know that his usage will be the same, even though I do think he'll be important. So Jeremy gives us a 16, 7, and 2. So yeah, what do you think about that in terms of game played, corner three? What's the biggest area you're looking for with Tobias and his contributions to this team?
Namely, just for his durability to remain. I mean, you say just like 70 games, almost 34 minutes. Like, he's a guy that can play a lot of minutes, but has also not gotten injured too much as well. And just the durability issues the Pistons have had, of course, notwithstanding guys being shut down at the end of the year, just having a vet who could come in and just be that rock solid guy, provide support for not just Cade, but Ivy and some of the other guys as well. I think that's what I want to see. I assume his efficiency is still going to be where it's been throughout his career. Obviously, he's going to be maybe more of a scoring outlet role compared to what he was in Philly. But if he can just remain durable, not miss any time, I think you feel pretty good if you're the Pistons.
So we got an interesting comment here. I want to go back to Big Cheese, 16, 3, and 6. Relaxing Sound says whatever Jeremy Grant averaged here is what they have Tobias doing. I don't know that his role is going to be that big. You may end up being right. Maybe it is. But just for reference, Jeremy averaged 22 points, 4.5 rebounds, almost 3 assists. He took 17 shots a night in his first year in Detroit. Now, the next season, he averaged 19 points on 15 attempts. I'm just not sure he's going to have that usage. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is a bigger focal point of the offense than what I'm thinking, but I'm leaving some of the, we'll get to it in just a second. I'm leaving a lot of that to Jaden Ivey, at least to start the year for me. And I think that's where I will be a lot different than most people, is I do think that this team is going to give, in this organization, Jaden Ivey a chance to be potentially that second option, get a ton of usage, playing off of Cade, but then also playing in the second unit. So our official Tobias numbers, and then I'll let you finish off on your Harris thoughts, Omari, from Wes is 17.5 points per game, 5.8 rebounds, 2.3 assists on 47, 36.5, 87 from the free throw line. Any final thoughts on Tobias before we move on to Simone Fontecchio?
No final thoughts on Tobias. I was just going to add that with Ivy, Fontecchio too is a guy that could potentially really, really thrive in a bigger role. I'll just go ahead and read his stats from last season. In Detroit, which I think was only 16 games, it was 15.4 points, 4.4 rebounds, 1.8 assists on 48, 43, 85 shooting splits, which obviously was really, really strong. Bryce, where are you on Fontecchio? And I guess, how do you measure a potential increased role with what you saw in Detroit last season?
Yeah, so Derek Brown says, I look forward to the Pistons Pulse every week. We appreciate
do too,
it,
Derek. We appreciate that.
I love it. It's the best. Guys, continue to give your stats in here. We're getting more and more people. So if you're just joining on YouTube or on Facebook, we're on Simone Fontecchio. Give us your numbers. We'll repeat them. We're not going to put them into the Pistons Pulse projection because you guys don't want to get crushed like we do whenever we're wrong. So we'll keep that just to Omari and I, but we'll read them out. So let's go to break, Omari. When we come back, we'll get into it. But as we go into break, Michael has Fontecchio at 11, 3, and 2. Mel 75 has Tech at 11, 3, and 1.5. I will give mine when we come back from this short break.
All right, we are back with segment 2. And Bryce, where are you on Simone Fontecchio next season?
So this is going to be interesting. I kept it a little bit higher. Maybe this is where my extra points are at with the team overall. I had Fontecchio going down from what we saw last year, but not as much as some guys. So I have Fontecchio at 14 points, 4 rebounds, 1.5 assists on 46, 40, 85 from the free throw line. Again, 40% plus on corner 3-point attempts. I will say, though, I have it here in my notes, I do think having other real floor spacers like Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley they eat into his role just a little bit because Tech was like the only guy last year we could count on to space the floor, and that's not necessarily the situation this year. I'm just wondering, I believe he got 30 plus minutes and 12 field goal attempts per game last season with Detroit. Maybe he gets that, but maybe not. So this may be a guy where I could see the numbers dipping a little bit lower even than what I have him at. Big Cheese says, how will JB use him? YouTube user Tech at 15-4, 1.5. 3 championship drive, 12-4-1. Jeremy, 15-5-3. So kind of numbers a little bit all over the place. I think we have anywhere from 11 points a game to 15 points a game. Where do you land, Omari?
Yeah, I actually think his numbers will go up a little bit. So I'm going to go 16 points, 4 net.
Wow.
I'm going to go 4 rebounds, and then I'm going to go an assist and a half. And I have him shooting 49% overall, 40% from 3, and 86 at the line. So I do think he settles into a pretty solid, maybe 3A, 3B row with Ivy. Assuming that Tobias is that number 2. And he's just all around solid. He even moves the ball pretty well. The ball doesn't stick with him. I just think a utility wing like that is going to be really hard for JB to keep him off the floor, especially if his shooting holds up and he gives you size in the perimeter. I think we'll see him get roughly the same shot volume as last season, if not a little bit more.
No, that's what's interesting, right? I think a lot of, and I'll include myself in this because I did send his numbers down a little bit from last year. A lot of us are assuming that his numbers, his role is going to go down from what we saw last season, right? And so I think this will be fascinating. I think he's going to start. So 3 championship drive asks a very interesting question. You think Tech will be the guy who's pushed in and out of the starting lineup throughout the season? Could be, maybe. I don't. I think he's I think him and Tobias starts. I guess if you really feel like I don't think Ron's ever really pushing to be a starter. I guess if at some point you really feel like you need to start a Sarr, that would probably be the guy. I mean, I guess you could go Cade, Sarr, Tech, Harris, Duren. That would be a very big lineup. But I think his shooting, while you do have those other guys, but his floor spacing from that wing forward position, I think is important. So for me, he's going to be a mainstay. And you remember, they did trade a real asset to acquire him. It was a second round pick, but it was at the very top of the second round. And so I would assume that he's in the plans for this team. I wouldn't be moving him in out of the starting lineup. I like him there. I think he will play well off of Cade Cunningham. And I think he gives real effort defensively. He's not a lockdown guy. He's not great. But if especially the starting lineup, I think they're going to go with Omari, or that I would do. Fontecchio's defense will be really important in a Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Tech, Harris, Duren lineup. His defense is actually pretty important. He's got to be a neutral, if not a plus defender with that lineup.
No doubt. He definitely does. And I think if nothing else from last season, we saw that he's a pretty smart defender. I think he's a team defender. Doesn't try to do too much, but knows where to be. And even that, I think can give the defense a lot of organization that it lacked last season. I mean, just being in the right place at the right time was a huge struggle, for this team a lot of times. So, again, I just think everything Tech gives you on both sides of the floor, it'd be hard for other guys to replicate that, given that there's not some giant leaps in shooting for some of these guys, of course.
So a relaxing sound says 11-2-2 for Fontecchio. So again, I would say this is the one where so far we've been a little bit all over the place. Just a heads up, guys, Jaden Ivey is next. I think this is the one that will be really interesting. Our Pistons Pulse projected stat line via the man, Wes Davenport, 15 points, 4 rebounds, 1.5 assists on 46.5, 40, 85.5. I think the important number there, obviously, is the 40% three-point percentage. So now you're talking, Harris at 36.5, Cade at 36, Tech at 40, real floor spacing on the floor. Next up, Jaden Ivey. Last season, 15.4 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists on 43, 34, 75. Michael already gave us his. He has Ivy at 15-4-4. YouTube user has him at 18-5-3. Where do you have Jaden Ivey's projected stat line?
So pretty similar to what he averaged last season, but like Cade, I think he gets more efficient. I don't know if the shot volume is there like it was last season, but I do think he gets more efficient. So I have him at 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists on 45, 35, 77 splits. So that's pretty similar, but I think the bump in efficiency is pretty meaningful, especially when we saw how up and down he was last season.
So Relaxing Sounds has him at 18-5-3. Mel 75, 15-3-4. 3 championship drive. This is what I'm talking about. Has him at 14-3-4. And then the next one, Detroit for Life 1000, has him at 25-6 on 45-38 with the exclamation point 82. Mac Walker has him at 15-4-3, and Big Cheese has him at 15-7-4, higher assist because the bench point guard rule. Big Cheese, you are in my notes because I literally wrote that in my notes for this episode. I have Jaden Ivey at 17-4-5 on 45-35-75, but just under 40% on catch and shoot 3-point attempts and 30 plus minutes a night. Again, I am just going into the season with the mindset that they were going to find out about, especially Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, Omari. I think that if I'm Trajan and I'm JB, I want to know what these guys are or are not. I want to see it with my own eyes whenever I'm in-house and I'm coaching them. And that's why I think they will start. That's why I think J.I. will get a ton of usage. I think Duren will start. We'll talk about him next. J.I., for reference, was 37% on catch and shoots his rookie season, 34% last season. I would like to see that jump. The rim percentage jump again. It did jump last year. So I'm expecting a jump in usage and efficiency. And as I mentioned, I think the little bit of a jump in assists per game come from the staggering of minutes and him playing pseudo point guard with the second unit when Cade Cunningham's off the floor.
And that's the question, right? Is he that de facto secondary point guard for this team, which has the roster set up now? It is. But the other part of that is that even in that role, he's got to improve his efficiency as a passer. I think, one, to keep that role, but two, for the assist numbers to be where they are. If he's not taking care of the ball and they have enough ball handling from Cade, that you're looking at him maybe passing the ball less, right? Maybe at that point, he's spot up cut type guy. So, 4 is sort of my, I think that's a safe estimate, but a lot of it really comes down to how much better he improves at making those simple reads.
Yeah. And this is where I think my points really get off is if this is who Jaden is, then I don't think Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley probably end up with the numbers I'm going to say at the end of the episode. Or if he's closer to what some people thought, if he's only a 13, 14 point a game guy, then I think you get a lot more from Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley. I think those guys play more minutes and their scoring is a whole lot more important. So I want to get a few more here. Steven Suggs has him at 18-3-3 on 45-36-80, playing 70 minutes. A comment here, Ivy will be the biggest immediate beneficiary of Fred Vincent. I think that's going to be huge. Jeremy Goldberg has him at 18-4-5. That's assists and rebounds. So 18-5-4. Other thoughts on Jaden Ivey? I think another thing I would like to see is the defense from him as well. We've had this conversation about the guard defenders on this team and that there's none that really stand out, right? I mean, Asar, I think, is definitely the guy that most people would say is the best overall defender on the team. He's a little bit more wing. I would like to see, especially if you're going to start a Cade and Jaden Ivey backcourt, or even if you're staggering Jaden Ivey to the second unit and playing him with a Tim Hardaway Jr., I think Jaden Ivey taking a step on the defensive end is something I'll watch for as well.
Yeah, I think Ivey's probably, if he's not on top of my list, he's definitely top 2 on players I'm just really curious to see next season. You mentioned it earlier, but it's a really big year for him and Duren being year 3. I'm sure both of those guys would like to secure extensions next summer, but a lot of that, it comes down to how much they improve. And for Ivey, that's going to be shooting, that's going to be playmaking, but especially defense as well for him to be the ideal backcourt partner next to Cade. So, yeah, I would say he probably tops the list of players. I'm just curious to see how they come back and look, because we've seen him hit threes. We've seen him make some great passes. We've seen him pressure the rum repeatedly. It just hasn't all really come together for him yet. And he really needs to have a season where it all comes together and you see him as an above average guard.
Yeah, I think that it's absolutely the season you want to see that, right? I had somebody ask, I'm so sorry. I'll try to look on Twitter in just a second. I think it was just Axis or something like that on Twitter, but reached out and said, hey, who do you think actually benefits more from the spacing, right? Cade and Jaden will both benefit from the floor spacing of a Tim Hardaway Jr., from a Malik Beasley, from Fontecchio, Tobias Harris. Who do you think benefits more? I think there is an argument that Jaden Ivey could benefit more from the floor spacing. I think Cade is so crafty with the way he plays and reads the floor so well that he's still going to find ways to be successful. We've seen that. think about the explosion that Jaden Ivey has. We've talked about his first step since he got drafted. You really open a space floor, let's say a Tim Hardaway Jr. and a Tech or Harris or whoever with him on the floor spacing it. I think he could be really effective, and we could see even more from him on this space floor. So we always talk about Cade benefiting. I think J.I. could as well, Omari.
I think he could too. I still think Cade benefits more, and only because Cade has the tools and the skill set now to immediately punish defenses. And I think Ivy still has to get there to an extent. But with that, I mean, we know how quick Ivy is. I think defenses will continue to play off of him until the shooting comes. But obviously, you can still scramble defenses with that first step, I think, regardless. So I think Cade probably benefits the most, but I would say Ivy is definitely number 2 on that list. And I don't even know who number 3 would be. I think those are the 2 guys that you need spacing for.
Well, I mean, those are really the rim pressure guys on the team in general. Nobody else we're going to talk about is that, other than potentially Asar. And then obviously Ron Holland eventually is going to be that guy as well, right? MC313 says, hey, fellas, just tuning in. Love the stream pod. Thank you guys so much. Everybody, guys, if you haven't, take the time, hit the like button, subscribe, rate, review, all of that. Help us keep growing. I know it's the off season, but we're going to be right into it very soon. Make sure everybody's turning into the Pistons Pulse. And then you're also listening to the DBB podcast, The Pin Down with Wes and Blake over there. AA says, you think Cade taking Cade off the ball can be a real thing in the future? This is something I go back and forth with people. I don't think so. Coming in, I thought that was something that maybe we'd see more of from Cade. The pushback I get from people is, well, the roster hasn't ever been there for him to do that. The other on-ball guy hasn't been there. I just think Cade is most comfortable with the ball in his hands. It's really hard to change that mentality. So I don't think that is something we'll see a lot of in the future, but maybe you think a little bit differently.
Yeah, the only way I see that happening, somebody has to challenge Cade for the ball, right? Like nobody else on this team is out level of ball handler, playmaker, scorer. I think he's pretty much unchallenged in that role. So if Ivy closes that gap, then yeah, maybe there are, possessions or stretches where you play off of Ivy a bit more if he's cooking. But, I think the way this roster is built, like that push would have to come from within. And until Ivy gets there, I think you put the ball in Cade's hands and allow him to do what he does.
All right, so Jaden Ivey, we're going to finish with 16.5 points, 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists on 46, 35, 76 as our Pistons Pulse projected stat line. MC313 says, liking this stream like a drive to work with no red lights. I love it. That's the best. You get green the whole way. Now, Jalen Duren. And this is another, I think these next few, these are the ones I was most worried about, Omari, was really being too high on Jaden Ivey after we got crushed last year for being too low. And then these next 2 guys, maybe not projecting bigger jumps. So Jalen Duren, this one will be fun. 13.8 points last year, 11.6 rebounds, 2.4 assists on 62, no threes, 79% sneakily from the free throw line, better than Luka Doncic, by the way, and 0.5 steals, 0.8 blocks. So this will be the first player we talk about with steals and blocks. Where are you guys at listening? Michael already gave us. He's got Duren at 12 and 12. YouTube user has Duren at 12 and 12. Omari, where do you have Jalen Duren?
Yeah, I have about 11 points, 12 rebounds, like 64% overall, 65% overall. Let's just go with 65. And it's like the blocks and steals is the hardest part, right? But I'm going to go with 1.1 blocks and 0.6 steals. So you're starting to creep closer to 2 stocks per game, but I see a moderate increase in both of those areas.
So
the free line, 80%, even 80%.
3 championship drive has Duren at 15, 13, and 2. Mel 13 and 12. Mac Walker 11, 8, 3 and 2. Mel has him at 1 block. Detroit for life, Duren 16 and 13 and 3 with 1.7 blocks. We have 15 and 15 from Aruna. 14 and 13 with 3 assists, 12 and 12 and a stock from relaxing. This is where I'm going to get crushed. I have his points going down a little bit more, Omari. I don't think I don't know where the attempts come from. And so if Cade is taking that usage, if J.I. is taking that usage, if Harris is taking that usage, if Tech has the usage, anybody, I just don't know that he's going to get all of that. So I have him closer to 10 points a game, but I do have him at 12 rebounds a game. And I think here's what I want to see. This is ultimately, here's what I want. I want to see 2 stocks per game from Jalen Duren. Like that would be the win over a jump to 15 points or 15 rebounds or anything like that. if he had 2 stocks per game, that would be a win for me. If he has that level of defensive impact and all of that, I think that would be huge for him. And so that's where I'm looking for the biggest jump. I almost don't care about anything else with Jalen Duren other than, can he have that level of defensive impact? And yeah, YouTube user said, I'd like 3 stocks. I would like 3 stocks as well, but it was 1.3 last season. So I think a jump to 2+ would be a major, major benefit. So Detroit for Life says he has him at 16 points per game because of his ability to attack the basket and hit free throws. I think the free throw thing is important because he will get fouled. He has the rim gravity, offensive rebounds. I may be a little bit low on the points, but man, if he could hit those stocks, I would be huge for him.
And I'll add 3 assists. I forgot to mention assists, but yeah, I think he's probably 5th in the pecking order scoring wise. Like he's probably more so a lob threat and in transition like last season. But I think there will be more playmaking opportunities, and I think he'll take a step forward as far as how he reads the floor. So I'll give him a full 3 assists per game next season as well.
So Omari, your pop says fewer rebounds per doing if they're shooting at a higher clip. That's a fair point. You know, if they do shoot it, I also wonder though, like, do they have less turnover? Like, I just wonder how many more shots they get. I hope they turn the ball over less, but they may play at a slower pace. So there's a chance. And I'm glad you bring up the rebound thing, because any guess how many other players or how many players averaged 12+ rebounds last season, Omari?
Yeah, it was not that many. Like it might have been.
Duren didn't do it. Duren was an 11.6. So what's your number?
I would guess Jared Allen. I would guess.
Just give me the number of players first.
The number of players. I would say 2. I would say 2. I don't think it was that many.
It's 4. And
okay.
And as you try to name them, Jared Allen was not one.
Okay.
We've already
Jonas Valanciunas.
Nope.
Clint Capella.
Nope.
All right, I'm out. I don't know.
You already named one.
Jokic. I said I'm trying not to name him. Like Jokic is one for sure. Embiid.
Okay.
Embiid. I'm assuming did it too.
I probably did 41 games played on this as well. So
okay.
Davis, Sabonis, and Gobert. Jokic, Davis, Sabonis, and Gobert.
Okay.
And just for reference, Sabonis is the only one of those 4 that didn't average at least 2.3 stocks per game. Like even Jokic averaged 2.3 stocks per game, and Sabonis didn't. I should say Jokic did that. Sabonis didn't, but Sabonis obviously averages 20 points and passes and 8 assists and all of that. So I think this stocks thing is a real thing. I do think that's my emphasis with Duren. I understand the points of, I think somebody brought it up that, Aruna says he thinks that the Cade JD pick and roll should be the primary offensive option. That's fair. If that's what it is, and it's a bunch of lobs and offensive rebound finishes, he may average more than this. But my thing here isn't JD getting worse offensively. I just wonder, I think he's the 5th option of a Cade, Ivy, Tech, Harris, Duren starting lineup. Isn't he the 5th offensive option there?
For sure. Yeah. He's the 5th option. And just by virtue of him not really being a shot creator either, I think we'll limit him. Like I said earlier, you're looking at lob threats pretty much like last season.
And I mean, if you bring in Tim Hardaway Jr., what's he going to do? He's going to shoot. Like he's coming in and he's getting shots up whenever he comes into the games. I don't know what the lineup is where he's like a primary guy, but again, maybe he just play finishes. Our final numbers here, and then we'll go to break. When we come back, we'll come with Asar Thompson and Ron Holland. But our official Pistons Pulse projected stat line for Jalen Duren is 10.5 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists on 65% from the field, a very important 80% free throw, and just under 2 stocks per game. 2.5 assists, Wes says, but just under 2 stocks per game from Jalen Duren. We'll talk about Asar Thompson, so get those numbers into the chat during this break, and we'll talk about him right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 3. Man, we still have a lot of guys to get through, but I'm sure Asar is probably going to take up half of this regardless. So,
yeah.
Okay, so looking at Asar's numbers last season, he averaged 8.8 points, 6.4 rebounds, 1.9 assists on 48, 19, 60 splits, and with 1.1 steals and 0.9 blocks. So a full 2 stocks per game last season. Bryce, where do you see Asar's role this season, and where are his numbers at?
Yeah, I'm going to keep him right about the same. I have him at 8 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists on 50% from the field, 25% from three. I want to see a jump. I think that's a reasonable jump. I'm not trying to go crazy with that. 70% from the free throw line, reasonable jump. 2 stocks a game, maybe more, 70 plus game played. I want to be very clear. I've tempered my expectations a little bit because of the injury to last season. And we didn't see him at Summer League or anything like that. I just don't know where Ausar is going to be. I think there's a chance he does come off the bench, and I don't know how many field goal attempts. So I think he'll be more efficient and maybe less attempts. I almost think what we see from Ausar is him just take on this role of the defensive guy, the primary defensive, try to take a jump into great defender on his way to being an elite wing defender. And that's where I want to see him this season. So some numbers here as you put yours together. Michael has him at 7'6", 1.5. Runa, 9'6", 2, 2, and 1. 3 championship drive, 9'7", 2 with 3 stocks. Chili has 10 and 8 with 3 stocks. Mel 75, 9, 7, and 3. Detroit for life, 11, 7.5, 3, 2.5 stocks. Where are you at with Ausar Thompson, Omari?
Yeah, so I actually have his scoring declining a little bit more. So I have him at 7 points, 7 rebounds. I still think he'll rebound. An assist and a half, 1.2 steals, and a full block. So I do have his stocks going up a little bit there. And for shooting splits, yeah, I'll keep him at 50. That sounds about right to me. 25. Yeah, I'm going to copy yours. 25, 50, 75, I think is a pretty, or 25, 50,
50,
70.
25. Yeah.
70 is where we're at. Yeah. So that sounds pretty good to me. I think he'll shoot the 3 a little bit better, but I don't see him becoming a threat after just one season, off season with Fred Vincent. I think that's still probably more of a long-term thing for him.
Buffs on Podcast says 8, 7, and 3 with 3 stocks. And then a quick note here from the Free Press. Pistons were top 10, 9th in the NBA for pace last year, just for everybody's reference. I mean, so they did play relatively fast. Just JB has some teams, if you go look through B-ball reference of the teams he's head coached, that were pretty lower in pace of play. AA says, I don't know how to play Ausar if he can't shoot at all. What lineups would you put out with Ausar? I think you can essentially play him in any lineup. Okay, let me back up. You can play him with Duren. I don't love it, but that's 2 complete non-shooters to me. So I think as long as I would try to avoid playing him very many minutes with Jalen Duren, Omari, but I think you can play him with one of Ivy or Holland, because those probably Ivy a little bit more than Holland. Holland's probably going to be guarded as a complete non-shooter. Those guys is what I call bad shooters. I think you can get away with one of those guys, I guess is my point. But there are lineups where you could play him with multiple, right? Like if you went, Cade, Tim Hardaway Jr., Ausar, Harris, Stu, like that's plenty of floor spacing. He's your one non-shooter in that lineup. So that's why I am a little bit intrigued by what Trajan did this summer is there are lineups where you can have Ausar out there, just tell him to go be great defensively, finish at the rim, offensive rebound, and let the other guys do the other stuff.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if his role expands or becomes more specialized next season. And my prediction right now is that it becomes more specialized. Coming in that he's one of your top perimeter defenders. He can cut. He can move the ball. He can rebound. So you come in with, I think, very specific skills, and you can form lineups around that. Like you mentioned, Stu at the 5, I think opens the door for Ausar to play the 4. And then you could put Tech at the 3. You have Cade in there. And then you could pick between Beasley and Tim Hardaway. And yeah, you have 4 shooters. And then, handling a lot of the more traditional 4 roles as a defender and rebounder. So yeah, I'm curious to see what JB has in store for him next season. Is he going to be like Isaac Okoro Part 2? Or are they going to try to tap into that playmaking and some of the other things he can do a bit more? I'm curious to see what they do with that.
Yeah, Rab says, and I know he has a starting lineup here, but he just ain't, he doesn't have Ivy coming off the bench. He has him staggered to the bench, but Ivy, Beasley, Ausar, Klintman, Stu. I don't want to say I completely agree that Klintman's going to be in the quote unquote 10-man rotation or whatever, but that lineup works. Like there is plenty of shooting. If Klintman is what we saw in Summer League as a floor spacer, that's plenty good. And Buffs on Podcast says more Cade Ausar pick and rolls. Yes, 1,000,000,000%. I would love to see a ton of Ausar as the screen and roll guy. I think that could actually be one of those situations where he really thrives. He's athletic enough to catch lobs. He's a good enough passer that he can short roll and make decisions. He doesn't really have to put it on the deck in those situations. I think it's an awesome role for Ausar. And you get defenders defending that aren't always used to it. You get the big in a different spot. So you could put Stu in the weak side corner. Okay, his man wants to come off and help. Well, now he's getting a wide open corner catch and shoot three. Or if it is him and Duren, where it works in that scenario is Duren's in the dunker and then you throw the lob to him. Again, I don't think you can do a ton of those minutes, but I think you can figure it out. So yes, we aren't talking starting lineups. We're just talking Ausar lineups that work. I think there are enough because of, and this is where if people want to give Trajan some love, because of the moves Trajan. So we went to this question earlier, Amari, who benefits the most from the floor spacing that was added? We had the Cade versus Ivy. Maybe here's an argument that Ausar benefits because you have so many other floor spacers. There's more lineups that actually work with him in it.
Yeah, I think so. Like Ausar as a player, you just have to have shooting around him. Like even Duren makes me a little, I don't like
it. That's what's keeping Ausar out of the starting lineup for me. To be completely transparent, I think they're going to start Duren, and I don't love him in Ausar minutes.
Yeah, so that's to me the primary limiter. But yeah, again, like everything you said about the short roll, him being able to throw the lob or find the corner or whatnot. And again, we keep coming back to this topic of how do you handle playmaking when Cade is off of the floor? It could just be a by committee approach, right? Like, I don't know if Ausar is like a point guard per se, but depending what actions you run, I do think you can play make through Ausar and Duren to an extent while Cade is on the bench. And I'm assuming Cade probably plays like 35, 36 minutes next season. So you're not having to plan around Cade being off the floor, not too much, really.
So our final projection has Ausar at 7.5 points, 7 rebounds, 1.8 assists on 50, 25, 70, 2.3 stocks. I think that would be a really good year from Ausar coming off, kind of a scary health situation at the end of last season. I have no idea what his summer was like. That's improved his efficiency, his shooting. I think that would be really good for him, especially if the defense is, borderline elite.
Absolutely. We have 13 minutes left, so we'll go ahead and talk to about Ron Holland, and then go a little bit more rapid fire.
So go ahead.
G League last season, 19.5 points, 6.7 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 145, 24, 73 splits. Bryce, I guess first question: do you see him being a rotation guy day one, or do you think it's more of a spotty role for him?
I think it could be spotty. I can definitely put a 10-man, 2 deep, whatever you want to say, rotation together where he is in it as a backup 3, because I think you can run a lineup of Holland and Ausar together. And I think especially if you stagger minutes, but then like if you have Holland, Ausar, and Ivy, that's not quite as great, even with the ball being in Ivy's hands. So I do think that there are some limitations. I don't know what the plan for Tim Hardaway Jr. is. I assume Malik Beasley got promised at least some minutes to come play for Detroit, even though, he got paid a little bit more than like what we saw from Gary Trent Jr. or Tyus Jones, who went to teams where he's going to have a starting role. But I assume there's going to be minutes from Malik Beasley. I just didn't know where to go. Like I looked at Bilal Coulibaly, but he played 27 minutes a night. And so I just don't think that that's what Holland's like. How many minutes do you think he's going to play?
Yeah, like I just
less than 20,
don't you? Role for him. Yeah, like I would say less than 20, and I would say it's very injury dependent and like garbage time dependent as well. Like I just don't see, with their forward rotation, how you could carve out more than 8 minutes for him per night, right? And at that point, you're probably just looking at shortening your rotation. So I say all that to say, whatever stats we predict for Holland don't count toward the final amount because, I don't see him being a rotation player night one. I mean, of course, things can change, but it's just tough to see right now, given how that forward rotation is.
And so people have brought up, Michael says Coulibaly didn't play many minutes, so they traded everyone. Cam Whitmore. I think that's where my thoughts on my numbers are going to come in a little higher than what people think, is because I think at some point in the season, he's going to get minutes. They're going to play him at some point this year. I think even if this goes really well, I don't think they're competing for a play-in. And so at some point, he's going to play. You're not just going to send him to the G League for the whole year and never play him at all. And so I have him. Here's another real quick caveat. How many guys do you think averaged 7 points per game as rookies last year in less than 20 minutes per night? And I gave there had to be like some substantial games played. It wasn't like 5 games or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, there's 6 guys. Yeah. Micic did it.
Okay.
Marcus Sasser averaged 7 points per game or more in less than 20 minutes a night last season. Whitmore, Duop Reith, Jordan Hawkins, Trace Jackson Davis. So like there's a path to still averaging 5, 6, 7 points, even if you're not, like I say, averaging 28 minutes a night as a rookie. So I think he's less than 20 minutes a night. I have him at 5 or 6 points, like 5 to 7 points.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm at around 5 points, 3 rebounds, and assists, like pretty reflective of a role where he's knocking on the rotation, right? So like that's not to say I don't think he'll have nights where he could hit like 15, 20 points. But yeah, I have him around 5 points, 3 rebounds and an assist, just reflecting that he's not likely to play super substantial minutes early.
Yeah. So I'm looking at Koulibaly because there's some conversation here. Yeah, I mean, Koulibaly had back-to-back nights in November where he played 33 minutes, 27, 30. He was playing pretty consistent minutes throughout the season. But I just kind of use that as a reference point for Ron Holland in terms of what I thought he could do in those minutes. We'll see. It also depends on how efficient he is as well. I do think you can pencil him into the rotation, though. Wes, we don't have to give an official projection. I know me and Omari were kind of like 5 to 7-ish, not real mathematical numbers there. Let's go Isaiah Stewart, and then we'll finish with some of the other guys. Isaiah Stewart last season, 10.9 points, 6.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists on 49, 38, 75, 0.4 steals, 0.8 blocks. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Stewart? And I'm really interested to see the chat's thoughts.
This is a really tough one, right? Because if Duran's the starter, and then you also see Paul Reed, probably getting some time here or there, what type of role does that leave for Isaiah Stewart if he's not the de facto starting 4, right? If you play Duran, 28 minutes, and then you play Isaiah Stewart 20, assuming that he's pigeonholed in as a pure 5 this season, I just can't see how his numbers stay consistent to where they were last season. So I am going to go for Isaiah Stewart. I'm actually going to go 8 points, 6 rebounds, an assist. But I do see him being a little bit more efficient. I'd have that on 51, 38, 77 splits. And you could add in like a block and half an assist. I'm sorry, half a steal as well.
Yeah, no. So I'm actually going to bump my number down just a little bit because you bring up a good point. I had his points going down, but not as much as I should because I didn't think about just the sheer minutes. So over the last 2 seasons, Isaiah Stewart has averaged 11 points per game, but in almost 30 minutes a night. I don't know there's a world where Stu plays 30 minutes, even close to it, right? Unless there's just injuries and, Duran doesn't, gets injured or something like that. So yeah, I think I'm going to drop it down another point per game and a rebound per game. So I'm going to go 9 points, 6.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists on 50, 38, 75. I wanted to get him to 2 stocks per game, but I just don't know that he's going to play enough minutes to do that. I want to see him again at 38% from 3 on at least that volume. Now, he shot 3.8 attempts from 3 last year. If he's playing less minutes, we'll have to go to the per 36 minutes, right? To see how many threes he's taking per game and make sure that it actually goes up. But yeah, I'm right about 9 or 10 points. And the other thing, sneaky with Stu, I want to see him stay healthy. The last 2 years, Omari, 50 games 2 years ago and only 46 games played last year.
Yeah, that's the sneaky thing. Like you said, Isaiah and Duran have both had injury issues over the last 2 seasons. And we're going to talk about Paul Reed here probably last. But, assuming that stays the case, there is really an opportunity for, Paul Reed to come in and make a case for himself, right? So, yeah, that center rotation is going to be one to watch just because I think that's probably the most limited position on the roster when you look at the guys who could actually fill that spot. It's 3 guys competing for all 48 minutes.
And I'm interested to see if JB sees minutes at the 4 for him, if he really spaces the floor, if he improved his handle this offseason, there could be more minutes there available, right? But I don't think there's a ton at the 4 because Tobias is going to play 30 to 33 minutes a night. You can put Tech there. I think you can play Asar at the 4 some. Just some numbers here. 3 championship drive has 8 and 5. Michael has 8 and 5. Aruna 7 and 7. Mel 8 and 6. AA has 10 and 6. And so, yeah, I think we're right in the same range there. One thing I'm not trying to be like, I just want to challenge everybody. Take your numbers if you put them in the chat and see what your total ends up to. Because when I first did this, I had like 135 points per game with all the players. And I texted Wes as like, oh no, this is way over. How am I going to get it down? Yeah. So I'm not trying to call anybody out. It's kind of fun to see. I thought I was doing really good keeping it down, Omari, and I actually wasn't. So our final numbers are 8.5, 6.3, 1.3 on 50.5, 38, 76, and 1.8 stocks on Isaiah Stewart.
And in my mind, I've been trying to keep like a loose running tally of where the points are, because I'm like, you want to land, and like I said, like assuming Reed and Holland are on the outside, you want the other guys, their points per game to fall around like 115, 116-ish based on the average from last season. So I'm curious to see where we end up as far as that. But let's go ahead and talk about.
I'm gonna answer one real quick on Tobias. Chili says, when was the last time Tobias ran as a small forward? According to Basketball Reference, 33% of his minutes were there last season, 74% the year before, but then the 2 years prior to that, none. 23, 5 years ago, and then he had a stretch of 3 or 4 seasons where very minimal. Now that's B-ball reference, so take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. I don't know how accurate that is. B-ball reference is awesome for a lot of things, but those are the numbers from there. AA says I think we also forget injuries happen. Yeah, like my total for these guys was 124. I don't think they're going to average 124 points, but yeah, not every one of these guys is going to play 82 games. And so I think you can be a little bit over what you think the team is going to score. Let's talk Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., and then we'll do a little bit of Paul Reed if we can.
Yeah, Malik Beasley, 8 points, 2 rebounds, an assist, 45, 42, 74 splits.
Okay.
That's a decline from his numbers last season, which were 11.3 points, 3.7 rebounds, 1.4 assists. But he did shoot 44, 41, 71. So the splits are pretty similar. But after a certain point, there's only so many shots available, right? Like I think when it comes to Beasley and Tim Hardaway, it's just like what's left. And I see both of their point totals going down compared to last season, assuming that there's no injuries that open up more minutes for them.
Yeah, so just so everybody, Malik Beasley averaged 11 points a game last year. Tim Hardaway Jr., 14. Beasley shot 41% from 3. Tim Hardaway Jr., 35. I essentially have these guys kind of taking the Burks and Sasser numbers. Again, it depends a little bit on if Ivy is what I think he's going to be and is getting the usage I think he's going to. I landed similar to what Michael had with these guys combined, 18, 4, and 4. And I had them at 18, 4, 5, 40% from 3, 65 plus games played. Here's all I care about with these guys, Omari. They got to space the floor. Like, please come in and do what they've shown that they can do in their career. Beasley with the percentage and Tim Hardaway Jr. with the volume. Like, please let them come in. They've played a ton of games over the last 5 seasons, both of them. Beasley's a career 39% three-point shooter on just under 6 attempts per game. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a career 36 on over 6, but he's shot over 7 threes a game the last handful of seasons. I just want to see these guys knocking down shots and keep the floor spacing we've been talking about.
For sure. Tim Hardaway Jr., last season, he averaged, and we'll give you guys the average for Malik Beasley, which is coming up now. Looks like 8.5 points, 2.5 assists, about assist and a half. Pretty similar splits, but I'm actually going to be pretty similar for Tim Hardaway here, who last season averaged 14.4 points, 3.2 rebounds, 1.8 assists on 40, 35, 85 splits. Bryce, I think we probably both agree that those are going to come down a little bit, but how much of a decline do you see for Tim Hardaway?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends a little bit what Sasser does. I think it depends on how good Ivy is. Are they going to stagger minutes like we're talking about? And so I think both of those guys end up under 10 points. My other wonder is, do they only play one of them, or do they try to get both of them minutes and they kind of eat into each other's stuff? I'm really interested to see that. Here's another thing I put: less than a turnover per game for these two guys. Like, they cannot be turning the ball over between the two of them. Like, that's one other thing I noticed with the guys they brought in, with Tobias, THJ, and Beasley. They played 70 plus games over the last 5 seasons. They had real floor spacing and they didn't turn the ball over a lot. And I really, really hope that continues with those guys. So yeah, 3 championship drives says that they had 130 points per game whenever they count in Tim Hardaway Jr. and Beasley. So it is interesting. I think the very first time I did it, I was at 135 and I was just like, oh no, I got some work to do here. I got to figure this out. So last one, Paul Reed, Marcus Sasser, Bobby Klintman, any of those guys for you, Omari?
Yeah, Reed again. I'm curious to see what his role is, because he really seems like a guy who could play. But assuming he's the third big and he's just filling in for Duran or Stu, I think his averages could be pretty healthy, even if he doesn't appear in every single game, right? Like I could see him averaging, if he's getting like those full backup minutes whenever he plays, with that caveat, like I would put him at 10 points, like 8 rebounds, 2 stocks. Like I think that's right in line with what he's done throughout his career. You know, that's assuming he plays like 20, 24 minutes. He's really productive. And his splits, I should read his numbers too. Last season, he averaged 7.3 points, 6 rebounds, assists, 1.3 assists on 54, 37, 72. Yeah, so I'm going to go for him 9 points, 8 rebounds, 1.5 assists on 50, 34, 70 splits. You know, and that's just assuming that he does get that backup role if somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it with Duren and Stu and the amount of minutes or games those guys have missed the last couple of years. There's going to be some minutes for Paul Reed. There's going to be times where, you know, you do want to play a bigger lineup. And so then you can play those guys together, or maybe your forwards are down a little bit and you just have to play those guys together. So I think he'll get to play, and we'll see. And I think at some point, I don't think all of these guys ends on this roster after the deadline and all of that. There'll be some moves that are made, and then it'll open up some minutes for some other guys as well. But that is our stats predictions for the season. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's just going to get number crazy and it's going to be annoying for you guys. So if you want to remember what we said, you'll have to go back a little bit earlier and check those out. But again, if you're listening after the fact, tweet at us, DM us, let us know what your projections are, what you thought, what you agree, disagree with. If you're listening on YouTube right now, please hit the like button, share, subscribe, all of that. If you're over on Facebook for the first time, this is the first time we went live on Facebook. We'll do this every week when we record the Pistons Pulse. Make sure you're, tuning in over there. Thank you for joining us. If you're on podcast versions, rate, review, subscribe, all of that. We love getting those. We haven't read one in a while, so leave us a review that we can read. A 5-star review, hopefully, but if you leave a 1-star, we'll actually still read it anyway. But Omari, this was fun. These ones go really fast whenever we get to do these.
No, they absolutely do. It's always a fun thought experiment because it really forces you to think about roles and rotation as well. I also wanted to throw out, I just added up mine and like all of my numbers predictions, and it was 115. So
okay, nice. That is very well done. So
I left out Paul Reed, and I left out, who else did I leave out? I left out Ron Holland. So that's the caveat for that. I think if you include them, it probably goes closer to 130.
Well, me and you were I didn't have Paul Reed in mine either. I did have Ron Holland. So I think we would have been about the same. So AA says, love the show. We appreciate it. We enjoy doing this so much. So we would have been about the same with those. Guys, we'll keep bringing you great coverage throughout the entire offseason. We got some other things lined up. We got guests lined up. We'll bring back Sheet or Sham and do that. We'll do a mailbag here in the next few weeks where you guys can ask questions ahead of time or live during the show. So we'll have great content moving forward. Thank you to everybody for joining. That's all I got, Omari. Take it away, my guy.
That's all I got as well. So big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chen, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to West Davenport as always. And we will talk to you all next week.